Hello everybody. So my life has been a little bit dark lately, so I thought I would share with you some dark stories about New Year's Eve since tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I've also noticed that there are times in my life... What is that shadow? Hold on. Alright, I fixed the shadow. Anyway, I realized there are certain times in my life where I become more interested in darker things and like crime stories and just like stuff you would consider depressing sometimes, but for me, like, it depends on what it is. It can't be too dark, it can't be too heavy. I find myself getting lost in these YouTube rabbit holes of just watching these hour-long things about crimes and stories, and I also love story times, and I've always had the plan to do story time videos on my channel, mostly because every time I've heard people talk about Tana Mojo and how her storytime videos are fake and that's what made her popular, it really bothers me because I genuinely have a lot of stories from like my life being a child and being a teenager and a young adult. So I really want to share those real stories with you guys instead of like fake stories that people can make up. I've got some real genuine stuff for you guys. So today I'm going to share with you first a news article that I found, and then I couldn't find any more crime stories really that have happened on New Year's. So I'm gonna get into a few New Year's horror stories after that, and then I'm gonna tell you guys a personal story of mine from back when I was a teenager. Let's get into it. The only major crime that I could find on New Year's Eve was this man who killed his mom on New Year's. And there was no information after that. Like, I tried to find whether or not there's interviews of this man, whether or not he talks about why he did it or the night that he did it, and there is no information. All there is multiple duplicated articles about this man. And the creepiest part about it is his mugshot, which I will show you guys here. One of the articles talked about how it's like he's smiling for a kindergarten portrait, and it's like, you guys are really getting creative with your articles. I mean, it's just a really creepy smile, but now imagining him as a kindergartner, pretty creepy. But the story goes that the 23-year-old attacked his mother in the garage with an axe, severing her head. Gomez then allegedly dragged his mother's remains from the garage to the garbage cans. And this is all allegedly, he said, because his mom was nagging him to take out the garbage and to move boxes around the house. So my guess is he's kind of sending a message by moving her body to the trash cans, and that is literally all that is said about the incident itself. Afterwards, apparently he was caught after a brief foot chase, and he allegedly admitted to the crime during an interview with detectives, revealing that he had plotted out his mother's death for 2 days. And then it also says that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and previously held under the Baker Act, which I don't know exactly what that means. If you're familiar, please leave a comment down below. It also says that he had prior arrests for loitering and prowling, which I don't know what prowling would mean, but also resisting an officer without violence and disorderly conduct. So there's a lot of things that talk about him having a past of mental illness and schizophrenia. Then there's literally nothing else about him talking about it. So I was really interested in this. I kept trying to find more about this and there was nothing that I could find, so I'm sorry you guys. Clearly he planned it for 2 days before that, so it would be really interesting to hear about what he was thinking and why he thought about planning it for so long, and you know, just anything. There was no further information about this. After this, I was trying to find more crime stories because that's what I was really looking for, and I couldn't really find any, so I'm just gonna share with you guys. There is a few horror stories from people just like telling their stories about what happened to them on New Year's, and I think these are really interesting. So this one is one of my like worst fears that I just try to never think about, because I feel like if you think about things then you draw them to you more. I wish I followed that thought process with more things, but with fear-based stuff I try to follow that. So first off, a bunch of my friends and I went to the rooftop bar of a hotel. About a half hour before midnight, I ran to my car because I had forgotten my camera. I figured I would have plenty of time to get back up there and find my friends. I grabbed my camera and got into an elevator all by myself. About halfway up, the elevator started shaking and stopped completely. I was trapped. A guy came on over the loudspeaker and told me there was an electrical short, but he would have me out soon. A few minutes later, I could hear people outside counting down and celebrating. I didn't get out until almost 1 in the morning. The worst part was my friends hadn't even missed me. And this was from a woman named Elena, age 25. That is like the saddest thing ever, and I feel like only a few amount of people would understand just how, like, first of all, she got stuck in an elevator, but then she's even more upset that her friends forgot about her, which I totally understand. That's like devastating. Dealing with stuff like that, I don't know, it's more of like a loner thing. Like, clearly she's more of an independent person. She went out to get her camera by herself. Her friends weren't like, let me come with you, you know? Like, she went by herself and then was stuck by herself, and her friends didn't really even think about her. So that's very sad and shows that she probably doesn't have very good friends. Next story. Every year I throw a big dinner party on December 31st. I was really excited last year because I had been dating a guy for a few months and was glad to have someone to kiss when the ball dropped. We hadn't talked much between Christmas and New Year's Eve, but I figured he was busy with the holidays. I cooked all day and made a great meal. My guy showed up late and the party was in full swing. When everyone sat down for dinner, we went around the table and said what we hoped for next year. I said I wanted to take more trips with my boyfriend. Then it was his turn. He sat there silently for a minute. Then he muttered that he couldn't date me anymore and got up and left. I was devastated. He hadn't given me any clues that he was unhappy. I spent the rest of the night crying in my room. That was Vanessa, age 29. I feel so bad for this girl. Oh my God. This makes me kind of glad that my relationship ended before the holidays, because if this would have happened, like, I can't imagine what would go through my head. And the fact that she said he showed no signs of being unhappy, why then would he, if he was unhappy, why did he decide to go and spend like the holidays with her even? And why did he let it go that far and to just, like, he couldn't go talk to her somewhere else? He had to do it in the middle of this gathering. That is so hurtful. And he didn't give her any reasons, so that really sucks. So that is it for the stories that I found. By the way, those were from a Cosmopolitan article from like 2014, I think. So I didn't want to just steal other people's stories like other people do on Wattpad or on Reddit. I have a story from when I was very young and not doing the best things in life as a teen. First of all, I've always been like an innocent girl. I never did a lot of things, and when I was drinking as a teenager, I've said this, I never drank that much. I would drink maybe a beer, or I would need like the smallest mixed drink and I would be blazed. Like, I wouldn't need anything more than that. And I smoked a lot of weed. Like, that's what I did as a teen, especially living right in a state that's bordering Colorado. It tends to leak across the borders. So I, from a very young age, had a bad taste in men, despite my good nature and wanting to like love someone and like have a healthy relationship. That sadly never was given to me, and I kept attracting very like bad guys. He was my third ever boyfriend. He was a gang member, and I don't know why I liked him so much. I met him in high school. He was in high school still, but I'm pretty sure he had been held back, and he was like 17 and much older than me. I think I was 15 when I met him, and then I turned 16. It was like a little hometown gang where they do stupid things with each other and like talk about who knows what they really did. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to get into detail. I was with this guy for almost a year. There are lots and lots of stories that come with that guy, but I'm only going to focus on this one night specifically. First of all, the thing about this guy is he lived 30 miles out in the country. So we would get like out of school, and his mom, because you know we were teenagers, his mom would drive us out to his house, and once we would all like make this a big deal. Like, if you needed something from town, make sure you get it before we all go 30 miles out in the country. Because when we go home, we're staying home. Nobody's going back into town. Nobody's gonna take you back into town to get what you want, like more weed or, you know, did you get your liquor for the night? She would always make sure that everything was settled before we went home. And it was a weird dynamic, you know, since he was obviously a gang member. He was young still, but his mom was a very, very promiscuous person, drank with us, partied with us, you know. I, again, don't want to get into too much detail about this, but she ran an escort business. So it was a very, very interesting relationship and dynamic, but she was also friendly. So I was like okay with it as long as they didn't bring anything inappropriate around me. And my boyfriend at the time made sure that I was comfortable, and he didn't like to bring anything inappropriate around me, or like they would say inappropriate things, but he tried to make sure that like I was comfortable because he really liked me at the time. There was this one night where we had planned to do like a small party, and I had a best friend at the time. Let's call her Lila, because I really like that name. I named my spider Lila, and I've never met a person named Lila, so Anyway, my friend Lila came out there with me. She had a crush on my boyfriend's friend, so it was like this whole thing where they were slowly flirting with each other and getting to know each other, and I thought it was adorable, and I was just kind of hanging out with my boyfriend and letting them hang out. And there was a few other people there. My boyfriend's sister was there, which I also have more stories about her. Jeez Louise. Wow, a lot of stuff happened, but I'll get into those stories in another video. This girl, let's call her Moon. That's a good name. If you knew who she was, this is a fitting name. Moon was there as well, and it was kind of just like a normal night that we had where we would all drink and kind of do nothing out in the country. You know, you figure out what to do out in the country. There legit wasn't video games. Like, we didn't have stuff like that. We weren't those type of people back in the day. We were just kind of like campfire, drinking, talking. Like, we're all just gonna talk, you know. It was really, I kind of miss it, but not what happens next. The details are a little iffy because my teenage mind, I was like all stoned, and I don't think I was drunk, but I was like a little bit buzzed. So the house was very big because it was out in the country, and so it was very hard to, first of all, find his house because they didn't have an address. It was so far out in the country that it was like in a field that the main road went up to, but then you had to then drive through an actual field that didn't have a road to get to his house. So it was almost impossible for like cops to know where it would have been, or for really anybody to know where it would have been unless they'd been there before, or they were told how to get there and what it looked like. So at this point it was pitch black outside. We were all inside because it had gotten chilly, and we started to hear yelling. His mom came and told us, all of us ladies, to hide, and it was just me, Moon, and Lila at the time. And I'm pretty sure my boyfriend and his friend, they were in the garage, which had a door directly into his room, their garage did, so they would kind of just go and do guy stuff in there for a little bit and then come back in and go in and out. And so we were told to hide, and I was kind of like very confused, like, what's going on? And the mom said, there's cops outside. And we were all freaking out. Like, my boyfriend wasn't there, so I was kind of like, what the fuck's going on? Am I gonna see him again? Like, what happened? And what the mom told us to do was get into the bed and put the covers on us and turn the lights off and act like we were sleeping. Which I was just like, this is so weird. Like, we're all fully clothed, clearly intoxicated young women in a bed together. Moon was an adult, mind you. She was very much an adult, like 23 probably at this time. But she was very much like looking out for us, and she was gonna stay with us and watch us and make sure, like, if we did get found by the police, that she was gonna try to cover for us, I guess. Again, at this point, I was very confused. Everything was happening really fast. So at that point, we were sitting in the dark and just waiting and listening. And we could hear outside the door, like the police were walking around the house and asking her questions, and I still didn't know where my boyfriend was at this time. Eventually the cops come into the room and they turned on the light and they were looking at us young girls and asking us questions like, why are you here? You know, what's going on? And I think we tried to just play it off as like, you know, we were just having a sleepover. Like, I don't really know what's going on. And I'm pretty sure they could tell that we were lying and that something was going on, because we were, first of all, clearly in a man's room. This guy had blue bandanas all over his walls, like just hats and shoes that are men's, you know? So like, why are there 3 girls in this man's room? They eventually took us outside to their police cars to breathalyze us. And at this point I'm freezing because I'm wearing what I used to wear all the time, which is short shorts and a tank top. And I'm a teenager outside in the freezing cold. I didn't have any shoes on. And I remember just being freezing. Mind you, this whole time, my friend Lila, we weren't really talking that much. We were so freaked out and like just waiting to see what was gonna happen that I don't think we said anything to each other this whole time. And my boyfriend was still gone. They breathalyzed me and I breathalyzed, I think it was a 0.0003. And that's when they knew that I was intoxicated, and they started to look through my boyfriend's room and they found a hookah. The hookah that he had was tied to his culture. It was like huge, like it almost was as tall as me at that time. I'm 5'4", so it was almost as tall as me. And it was this beautiful, intricate hookah. He wasn't there to explain it. Now that I'm remembering it, his sister was in his room when they were looking through it, and she was like, that's for our culture, you know, we do hookah, we smoke hookah, which is actually true. The cops were just trying to find something wrong about the situation, and they were having a hard time at first, but then they breathalyzed me. After they breathalyzed me, they called my mom and they called my friend's mom, and I remember my friend being like, oh, my mom's not gonna care, like it's fine. And I was just like, oh my god, my mom is going to kill me. Even though I didn't blow like anything. Nothing had even really happened. Nobody knew why the cops were there. The cops didn't say why they were there, how they knew where to go, what made them come out there. Like, it was so very confusing, and to this day we still don't know what exactly happened. But they called my mother, and my mother was very angry, and she wasn't going to be able to find the house, first of all, where we were at 30 miles out in the country. And she didn't want to. She wasn't, no matter how far away I was and in trouble I was, she wasn't going to drive that far for me. Like, she was upset, but she was also tired. Like, that's the kind of person my mom is. She ends up asking them to meet her on the highway that meets the pass that leads to his house, so that she didn't have to drive 30 miles anywhere. She just wanted to like drive a little bit through town and stop on the side of the highway and pick me up there. So that's what happened. Mind you, I still hadn't heard from my boyfriend. And when I was talking to the cops and all of them, I didn't mention anything about my boyfriend because the mom had specifically told us not to mention the boys. She didn't want them to get in trouble. You know, that was her son. She was genuinely worried about him because I don't know why. I'm pretty sure he was on probation now that I think about it, so it makes a lot of sense why he disappeared during all of this. Yeah, we were told not to mention him at all, so I didn't mention him to the cops. I didn't indicate at all to having a boyfriend, which was very weird for me. And I finally heard back from him later that night. Him and his friend, and they went and hid on the roof. That's where they were the entire time. Mind you, the cops were around their house and their property looking for them for like an hour or two after I had been taken home, and they did not find him at all. My ex was such a weird, crazy person. The first thing that he did, first of all, was abandon me and go onto the roof. Like, it's such a crazy story, such a crazy time in my life. And we still never figured out why the cops were called, why that even happened. I was placed on a probation where they don't watch you. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a probation that's not technically a probation because they don't need anything from you. They don't need you to come to meetings unsupervised. That's what it's called. I was really young and they just felt bad, and they were able to conclude after the only meeting I ever had with my probation officer was to take a pee test after I had gotten caught at the whole situation, right? And they concluded that they found marijuana in my pee. So then after that, all he did was ask me a bunch of questions about weed and whether or not I smoked it and how often and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just said like, oh, I was smoking it at the party. You found it at the party, right? Yeah. I smoked a lot that night. I don't know how much, but that must be why it's in my pee. And then after that, I never had another meeting with that probation officer. I never really needed to do anything from there. That's just one story from being with that crazy guy, and I'm glad that I got out of it safely and nothing ever bad happened more than that, because it definitely could have, and I was definitely around the wrong crowd as a young teenager, so I'm glad that it didn't last that long. And I really loved him, which is really crappy because it messed with me even more and added more like trauma to the already traumatic experiences that I've had in life. And it made me more vulnerable to men like that. And I don't know why I attract men like that. It's really weird. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry I rambled on for quite a bit here. I hope you enjoyed that. I kind of was all over the place. It's hard for me to remember that story perfectly, but I really hope you're enjoying the videos. I'm trying to put out a lot more of them, so if you enjoyed that at all, please give this a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm thinking about doing a lot more storytime videos, and I'm also now thinking about doing crime story videos because I absolutely love that kind of stuff, and it's really helping distract my mind from being depressed right now. So it's always been something that interests me anyway, so I think that doing stuff on my channel that I'm genuinely interested in really makes me happy and really keeps me going. So if you guys have any ideas or like that idea, please give this a thumbs up and give me a comment below. Or if you have a story about New Year's that you'd like to get into, have a good day, good night, good evening. Happy New Year's. It's not gonna be 2020 ever again. So that's cool.